Up next, please welcome Rafael Gumerio, Senior Analytics Specialist Solutions Architect with AWS, and Prashant Agrawal, Search Specialist Solutions Architect with the AWS OpenSearch Service, who are here to talk to you about how to do microservice observability with OpenSearch. They'll show you how to instrument, correlate, collect, and analyze traces along with log data from user frontends to service backends. Please welcome Rafael and Prashant.
Hello, guys. Good afternoon. My name is Rafael Gumerio. I'm from Brazil, São Paulo. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to invite my friend Prashant. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hey, hello everyone. So my name is Prashant Agrawal, and I'm working as the Senior Search Specialist Solution Architect with Amazon OpenSearch Service.
Okay, thank you, Prashant. For today, I'd like to talk about how to do microservice observability, of course, using the OpenSearch. Basically, the agenda, what is observability? Why do you need observability? Some tools, the open source tools relate to observability. In the OpenSearch, all the features relate to observability, the end part of the demonstration. Okay. What is observability? Basically, in terms of the Gartner definition, observability is the capability in terms of the continuous generating insight based on some principal signals. For example, the trace, metric, and logs. It basically, based on the signal, the goal basically is the influence the system. Okay, but it's more formal definition from Gartner. But I'd like to share with us basically my point of view based on a lot of different customer interaction in Latin America. Basically, the first point, in the short answer in terms of observability is the data analytics challenge. Is the first point. Of course, some customer or the community start to think about, okay, what is the requirement? What is the I need to think about in terms of the observability use case? The first point you need to think about a solution was support a lot of volume of data, in the terabytes or petabytes. Of course, in some different formats or some different ways. But the other important point, basically the high cardinality challenge. But what is high cardinality in this context? So basically, high cardinality, I'd like to put a sample. Imagine you have a system, millions and millions of different users. You need to understand a specific or the single user behavior. This is basically the high cardinality challenge. The second point or the third point, basically the high dimensionality. But what is high dimensionality? Basically, in terms of the observability, you need to have a more context in terms of the data. For the understand the behavior, you, of course, you try to reduce the mean time to identify some failures or reduce these failures. Basically, the dimensionality, for example, what is the language version, what is the region you deploy your application, the instance type, or something like that. But of course, it's 100 different labels or dimensioning. It is not I need to think about what is the best system or for support this type of challenge. Okay, so for now, I'd like to more deeply in terms of the definition, some type of signals, the log, trace, and metrics. So the first one, basically, the logs. What is logs? Basically, logs are the signal with the textual payload. Of course, the first part usually have the timestamp. In the second point, in terms of the capture event or the detail about this event, it's the in terms of the logs definition. So the next one, in terms of the metrics, metrics are a numerical signal, basically in the regular interval by second, by minute or by hour, but metrics, not only in terms of the infrastructure level. No, basically the metric is it's possible to apply for the business metric or some like application metrics. No, it's a very important signal in terms of observability. The next one, basically trace. The trace basically talk about in terms of the propagation execution path, But in the other words, basically talk about the whole story about the transaction, Imagine you have the system, the start in the front page, all the interaction among the service or among the components, basically the trace is possible to capture all these steps or all this data from all the interaction in the customer execution. Okay, so the next point, telemetry. But what is telemetry? Basically, telemetry is the process or the flow in terms of getting the data from the source based using agent or collector. The final point basically sends this data to the destination system. In this case, is the good example, of course, the OpenSearch. But not only OpenSearch, it's possible to put other types of destination, Splunk, I don't know, Datadog, or any other option. Okay, the next point, basically the feedback loop. A few slides ago, I talked about in terms of the Gartner definition, the goal of the influence the system. Basically, this process using the feedback looping definition or idea in terms of the influence the system. But not only the system, but sometimes is the human influence. For the support in terms of the take a decision to understand the application behavior or user behavior. You of course the software. A good example here, basically, imagine you have some different microservices in the Kubernetes. You need to understand what is the best moment to start the scale my application. Basically, using the telemetry data, understanding this data, you apply some scale process or no, is maintain the same capacity. Okay, so the next part, basically, why do you need observability? Before that, I talk more about what is observability, but why you need observability. Basically, now in using the microservice architecture, I have the couple of the services. I have a lot of different services in terms of the distributed system. Basically, distributed system sometimes it's hard to identify what is the root cause of the problem, or some case you need to troubleshooting in terms of the latency or some performance issues. Okay, so. The other point in terms of the microservice related observability, in terms of, okay, you need to identify what is the source of problem, But it's a buggy or sometimes a PI failure or 3PP failure in terms of some SaaS components, I have some challenge in terms of to identify the root cause of some type of problem. Okay, then the next point in terms some importance in terms of the observability in the microservice perspective. The first point, provide insights based on the communication among the servers. The second one, I talk about in the last one, basically the root cause analysis of the issue, track individual in terms of the request in multiple services, troubleshooting the performance or latency issues, identify some scalability issues. Now is the other one. Okay. Now, Prashant, please.
Hey, thanks, Rafael, for giving the introduction. Like, what is observability and why do we need that? So let's take a step back and talk about tooling and instrumentation. So, do we really have a single tool which rules them all? So, I would say, like in my opinion, there is no single tool or there is no single project so which can replace everything at once. So, this particular space is still being defined, and there are so many open source projects and a broad range of other vendor projects which are coming along into this new place of the observability. But the one thing is clear that standards and the regulations and the approaches are becoming the norm with respect to the observability, and that challenges like one tool to rule them all kind of concept. So OpenSearch project is really putting a great efforts to create the centralized interface where user or operator can view all of the logs, metrics, and trace data. And like these kind of tools and solutions not only influence your operational input. So these kind of tools they not only influence your operational and business income, but it can also like drive some sort of business out of these tools. So for example, like if your operation team have the visibility to kind of troubleshoot the applications or kind of find the issues in a timely fashion or in a near real time fashion, then it will not only help your development team to build the high resilient applications or kind of fault tolerant application, but it will also influence your customer experience, which will in turn drive the revenue and has the potential to scale your business in terms of like scaling your business. So here I'm going to talk about like what is the observability data flow in a nutshell. So say number one, we have a set of producers. These producers are like it could be your application instances, it could be your servers which are sending the data to your like log solutions, and then it could be some other AWS services as well. So in some way, like we have a set of services that are generating a tons of data and logs, and then we have a layer of collection. So in the collection layer, it is going to bring all that data forward from the producers, and then typically for an application you will have on the application server there could be some collector which is forwarding. It could be like say Amazon Kinesis agent, or like if we talk about the open source world, it could be Beats, it could be FluentD and FluentBit. So specifically around the container, these are common choices to collect these kind of logs data. Then on the next set, we have the aggregator layer. So here you are sending all the data from the collectors. So there you need some sort of buffer solution or the aggregate solution which can receive from those collectors so that you can avoid overloading your open source OpenSearch cluster. So you really need that particular layer which can bring all data together and reduce like a number of concurrent requests you are sending it to the OpenSearch cluster. Then once you have those data, you can send it to the OpenSearch and then use the OpenSearch dashboard to kind of create the visualizations or do the correlation across all of your logs, metrics, and trace data. So moving forward, at the foundation level, as I was talking about the Open Telemetry. So you have the Open Telemetry collector, which is kind of a CNCF project, 100% free and open source. It gives you collection of different tools, and APIs, and these could be used to instrument, collect, and instrument all the data and send it to your next layer. Then it supports like different libraries like Eager, Zipkin, Prometheus, which can be used to do the instrumentation of your applications. Then it is kind of, you can say, there are definitely talented builders who are putting a lot of efforts on these open source project, and they are kind of evolving this project across different technical and business vertical, which is kind of supporting the different flavors like logs, metrics, and traces across the log analytics ecosystem. Now let's talk about the collector side. So on the collector side, you have the FluentBit, which is another lightweight open source shipper, and it is also as part of the CNCF project, and it's kind of fast, scalable, and it also has the metric processors and forwarders. Then this architecture is based on the plugin ecosystem so that you can collect the data, apply some sort of filters, do the pre-processing or post-processing on those data. So it's kind of, you can say, ETL, which you can perform on those data and then send those data to the next layer. Another point is like, do we get onto the vendor lock-in when we are using those kind of products? So all of these products are vendor agnostic. There are no kind of licensing. It's kind of part of the open source offering. And one of the good thing is like it has the extensible and integration with like Prometheus, OpenSearch, CloudWatch, Matrix, and everything. So let's jump on to the aggregator side. So Data Prepper is an open source collector for processing observability data, and it can collect data from various sources. Then once data is collected, it can be used to filter, transform, and enrich the data before it is sent to the target, such as the OpenSearch, and use the dashboard to visualize all those kind of data. Lastly, it also has the integration with OpenTelemetry collector, like the different libraries or the instrumentation libraries, Eager, Zipkin, and FluentBit. Then what is so basically OpenSearch observability is broadly divided into 5 different features. So here I'm going to talk about like what are different features within the observability into the OpenSearch. So first one is the trace analytics or the distributed tracing. So you can say you have some trace data or the span data coming into your system, and you want to get the overall flow of how the request is propagating across your system. So that can be kind of achieved by using the trace analytics feature. So I'm going to give a quick demo around all the features which I'm going to talk about. Then you have the event analytics. So it is kind of log monitoring. And with event analytics, you can use the PPL, pipe processing language, queries to build and view different kind of visualization of your data, as well as you can use the features such as log tailing and log surround to view those logs. Then there is the app analytics. So using the app analytics, you can monitor the application availability, and it can help you to drill down and check the detailed view for the logs and traces. Then operational panels are collections of some sort of visualization tools generated using the PPL language again. Then lastly, we have the notebook. So notebook feature can be used to tell a story with your data, or it can be used to create runbook, or maybe like if you want to create a root cause analysis report, you can use the notebook for that one. So this is kind of a very high level overview of what traces and spans are. So distributed tracing is a way which could be used to observe the request as it propagates across different systems. Then in this one, a trace is a collection of operation which represents as unique transactions handled by a particular application. So let's say in this particular architecture, we are building an e-commerce application. So e-commerce application can have different services and different components. So like, for example, it will have the inventory service to load the product data. It could be the recommendation service, like where you're searching for X, then it recommends you for Y. Then it will have the payment gateway. It will have your order application, like order microservice to process all the orders or cancellation and everything. So in this scenario, the overall request, how it flows, is termed as the trace. But the individual transaction which is happening into the complete request, like a user clicking a button, then it's going to kind of create an order, then it's doing the payment. So all these individual terms are termed as the span, but the overall story is being known as the trace. And now this is the demo architecture which I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to demonstrate it. So in this scenario, as I was talking in previous example, we have different kind of applications. So here, like all these different applications, like say your recommendation application or the inventory microservice, it sends your log data using the Fluent Bit, then it sends those data to the data prepper. So basically the same pipeline which I was talking earlier, like how does the observability data flow and get into the OpenSearch. Then when we talk about the instrumentation or the traces, so in that scenario, you have the AWS distro for OpenTelemetry, which can collect all of your instrumentation and the telemetry data across different microservices. And then those data can be sent to the data prepper, which can further send all of these traces plus log data into the OpenSearch. And then you can use the OpenSearch dashboard to visualize all these kind of data in a single pane of glass. So I think next one is the demo. Okay, so in this one, I have logged into the OpenSearch dashboard. And once I'm logged into the OpenSearch dashboard, you can go to the observability. So now if I go to the observability, it has all the 5 different features which I was talking about, starting from trace analytics to event analytics, application analytics, operational panels, and the notebooks. So let's go into the trace analytics. Now if I come here, as of now, you don't see any data because I'm filtering it for last 15 minutes, and probably I'm speaking for last 15 to 20 minutes, so I'm not generating any events. So what we have is we have simulated this into an application. So this is an application which is kind of the observability workshop. And it has different product like say matrix or management or the threat detector. So as soon as you load this particular page, so basically you are running kind of a web application which is kind of getting some sort of inventory. So once I load this particular page, now if I refresh my OpenSearch dashboard, so you can see I'm getting the real-time trace and the logs where I'm getting like my trace group of load main screen is getting called. So let's go into that particular application. I'm selecting some product. Maybe I'm selecting 2 products. Then clicking on next. Then there is an option like you can do one-click purchase or like you can go in details. So if I'm running one-click purchase over here, and on other tab, I'm selecting some of the other products and just going next. Basically what I'm doing is I'm simulating kind of an environment where you have multiple e-commerce application or the microservice which is generating your logs and traces. Once I get that, then there are different applications, different APIs. For example, getting the order status. Now I'm clicking on the order status, or maybe I'm clicking on the cancel order. Now, if I go back into my OpenSearch dashboard, and now I'm refreshing for the last 15 minutes, you will see a lot of trace groups being generated over here. So here you can see we have the load main screen as we were loading the web UI or the application. Then we have the create order, cancel order. So whatever operation I'm performing on the application side, so we are getting those traces and logs over here. And the one good thing with respect to the trace analytics is on the right side, you can see there are different columns where you can measure the performance of your microservice. So for example, what are the average latency across different applications? What are the trend over 24-hour period? And then one another thing is you don't really use the trace analytics to figure like what the problem is, but you can also go inside and figure out where the problem is and how to fix that. Now, if you look at the error rate, so we are simulating in such a way that your client checkout application or the payment application is having some sort of failure. So that's where you get the error as, for example, 100%. Then you can select a particular trace group over here. Then it will filter the complete trace analytics page for this particular trace, and it will give you the service map. So what the service map does is it gives you the correlation of this particular service with other services. So for example, your payment application is calling the front-end client, or maybe it's calling the analytics service, maybe it's calling the inventory. So that's where you get the service map, and these service map can be hovered to get like whether what is the latency for an individual service, what is the error rate for different particular service. So here we get the service map. Now, how do we get to the traces? So we have selected the filter for the checkout. Now, if you go to the traces, you can see what particular traces is getting failed, and then you can go into a specific trace and then see what are different spans. So spans as in like the separate calls which are happening to kind of complete the transaction. So here you are getting the some of the errors on like say maybe checkout or when it's running the post HTTP post from the front end client. So once you get those errors, you can copy the trace ID over here, and that's where we go to the event analytics. So we have seen the traces. Now how do we get the logs for this particular trace which is failing? So now I go to the event analytics. You can run the PPL query where you can select your source index. So my source index is my log data, and then I'm filtering it with respect to the trace ID. So I select the trace ID, and here I'm just copying the trace ID what I got for that. Okay, so now we got the log data for this particular trace. And if you go and open the log data, you will get the actual failure. Like the checkout operation is failing because my service is returning 503 error. So that means there could be like you are sending too many requests when you get the 429, or if your service is unavailable, you will get the 503. So that way you get the trace, and now you can correlate it with respect to the log data. Then, for example, as I was talking about the other feature with respect to the application availability now. So let's move on to the app analytics. If I go to the app analytics, here you can set your availability of your application. So like one good thing is like you can select a particular trace group what you want to create for that particular application. So I have created two applications like the checkout application and the inventory application. And in the checkout application, what we have is we have selected all the trace group which are related to the checkout. So now if you look on the trace group names over here, we have the checkout and the pay order. Then from the application analytics, let me take a step back and show you the configuration. So here you have your log sources, like what all log sources you are getting the data. And then you have the trace groups, and here you set up the availability. So if you go here, as of now, my application is green. But how do we know like whether this application is green or not? So that has been set depending upon the parameter or the SLA what you are setting up. So for example, say you want to maybe term your application to be green where when your latency is less than 100 millisecond, or maybe the 100 to 200 millisecond is, that's when you will call it as yellow, or maybe like 200 millisecond or more, you call it as red. So when you go to the application over here, and you go to the panel, you get all the settings which you can set up to get the availability. And now, if you look on the availability data over here, so I'm calling like if my application is taking less than 500 millisecond, that means it's green. If it's taking like 500 to 800, it's yellow. And if it's taking more than 800, then it's red. So if I tweak some of those parameters, so for example, I make this one as 100, this one as 300, and this one is 301. I preview those data. I save this one. Sorry. Okay. After saving this particular application, I go back to my application analytics again, and now you can see my availability status for the checkout application is red. So it's kind of tunable, like you can define for like what particular latency you will term it as red, green, or yellow. You can define your custom naming like available or not available. So depending upon those parameters, you can set the availability. So apart from the availability, you also get the correlation of your trace and spans within the application analytics itself. So for example, you go into the trace and spans, and here you have all the different trace IDs and the trace groups. So basically what you can do is, if you want to really go into the logs from this particular screen, you can select a particular trace ID, then again go back to your event analytics, search for a particular trace ID and see what is failing. Apart from the trace and spans, you also have the log events. So when I talk about log events, it gives you all the log data for that particular application. So all of these logs are only specific to like the checkout application. And then you can do some sort of live tailing. So if you're coming from the, say, Linux background, so we have tail-f command, which can kind of tail all the logs what you're generating in a particular file. So when you do the live tailing, you can set up the time, like after how much time it has to do the live tailing. So it will be continuously streaming all of your data in near real time, and it will be adding all those data into this particular application. So next one, I'm going to talk about the panels. So panels are nothing but, you can say, visualization and dashboard, what you have into the OpenSearch dashboard. But the thing is, into the panels inside the app analytics, you can run the PPL queries. So if you want to generate some sort of visualization and dashboard using the PPL, then you can go with the application analytics and the panels. And configuration, I already showed earlier, like you can set up what sort of availability you want to set up, what all different trace groups you are having, and then what all the services involved for this particular application. So now we talked about the trace analytics, event analytics, and the app analytics. So next one comes the operational panels. So operational panels are nothing but some sort of visualization and dashboard. So say you want to show how many 503 errors you are getting over a period of time. So then you can go and set up those things into the operational panels. So I have one panel, and what I'm talking about is like I'm showing some sort of bar graph and some sort of charts where I'm showing what is the maximum duration by service. So I have like say hundreds of different services. So I can see which service I need to focus with respect to the optimization. So in this scenario, my front-end client is kind of taking a lot of time. So if I have to do any optimization, I can simply go into and look the log for the front-end application and see what can be optimized in this particular application. And on the other side, if you see the order service or the database service, they are running really good because they are having the lower latency across all the different services. Then you also have the endpoint. So endpoint is like what kind of HTTP request you're calling. It could be GET, PUT, POST across different services. So those are getting logged as part of the endpoint. And then you can go and figure out which particular endpoint is taking most of the time and where you need most of the optimization. So that can be done using, like when you kind of go and look onto those charts or the graphs, you can figure out where you need the optimization. Then last feature which I talked about is the notebooks. So notebooks are really interactive and collaborative rich reports which you can use to kind of generate, say, root cause analysis report. Or maybe like if you want to run some sort of operational review, so you can use the notebook to create all the operational review report. And if I open one sample report over here, so it does not only have the text data, but whatever, let's say, the panels what we created with respect to different charts and graphs, you can add all those different charts and graphs into your report. And once you add those reports, it could be like, and even like you can add the data also in the tabular format, and then you have the final report. And then maybe like you want to send this report to, say, leadership team of to the development team where they can analyze the report and figure out what was the issue. So there are options into the reporting where you can download those into the PDF or PNG format. So this process will run in the background. And once the report is available, you will get the pop-up notification. Then you can simply go and download the report. So this is the feature with respect to the notebook for creating maybe like operational review or the root cause analysis. So I think that's it for the demo. And now I just want to talk about one thing. Yeah. So the thing is, what next? So you saw like how observability can be used to kind of run the microservice based trace analytics or the event analytics. So whatever demo I was showing, like the web UI, whatever data we are generating, so we have a workshop over here. If you want to scan the code, you can scan it. You can go to the workshop and run it by yourself. And you can kind of see everything in action like near real time. And second thing is, we are coming up with the microservice observability workshop, which is happening on 28th September. So there are some LinkedIn and Twitter posts. So like you can either contact us or like get yourself added for that particular workshop where we will be running kind of 2 to 3 hours hands-on workshop where you will actually set up all these development environment with respect to the workshop, deploying all the application, and then viewing all the data, whatever I showed here. So that's what I have with respect to the demo. And yeah, so thanks everyone for being here. And like, it was great meeting in person and talk about the observability.
Thank you.